The boutique sat on the corner of the most expensive street in the city, its tall glass windows glowing softly under golden afternoon light. Everything about the place whispered luxury. No, it declared it. From the muted hum of classical music floating through the doors to the flawless marble floors polished so perfectly they reflected the ceiling lights like a still lake. This was not a place meant for just anyone, and Josie felt that the moment she stepped inside. Her heels clicked once, then again, the sound far louder than it should have been, echoing through the vast, quiet space. Conversations paused. A few heads turned. Not openly, never openly, but enough for her to notice. Josie adjusted the strap of her leather handbag on her shoulder, the worn-in softness of it grounding her. She was dressed neatly, thoughtfully. A crisp cream blouse tucked into dark-fitted jeans, gold studs in her ears, her curls pulled back into a low puff that framed her face. Her skin glowed naturally, untouched by heavy makeup. There was nothing careless about her appearance. Yet somehow, it still wasn't right for this place.
She knew that look.
The slow, measuring glance that tried to calculate her worth before she'd said a single word. Josie ignored it. She walked deeper into the boutique, letting her fingers brush lightly along the cool glass counters as she moved. The air smelled faintly of citrus and polished wood, clean, expensive, controlled. Every item inside the store had been placed with intention, spaced just enough to remind customers that abundance here was selective. Across the room, behind a sleek counter, Mr. Reynolds, the store manager, noticed her immediately. He didn't mean to stare. At least, that's what he later told himself. But his eyes lingered, starting from her shoes, traveling upward in a way that felt less like observation and more like assessment. His brows knit together almost unconsciously. She didn't look like his usual clientele. Josie stopped in front of a glass display case near the center of the store. Inside, resting on velvet cushions, were rows of luxury watches, gold, platinum, leather bands in deep browns and blacks. Each one gleamed under the lights, pristine and untouched, like it had never known time's weight. One watch caught her eye. It wasn't the biggest or flashiest. Just a slim gold frame, clean face, elegant simplicity. Timeless. Confident without needing to shout. Josie leaned in slightly, her reflection merging with the glass. For a moment, the world around her faded. She imagined the weight of it on her wrist. How it would feel. How it would mark moments, not just hours, but milestones. She smiled softly. It was a private smile, one born from memory. She thought of her late nights, her long days, the years she'd spent proving herself in rooms that doubted her before she ever opened her mouth. She thought of patience, of timing, of how far she'd come. That smile, small and quiet, did not go unnoticed. From across the store, Mr. Reynolds watched her more closely now. Something about her ease unsettled him. Customers like her usually asked questions nervously, kept their hands folded, moved cautiously. Josie didn't. She stood there like she belonged. Mr. Reynolds cleared his throat and adjusted his tie before stepping out from behind the counter. His smile appeared practiced, but his eyes remained sharp. "Can I help you?" he asked, his voice polite in tone, but tight underneath. Josie turned to face him, meeting his gaze without flinching. "No, thank you. I'm just looking."
Her voice was calm.
Educated. Steady. Mr. Reynolds' smile didn't relax. Instead, he clasped his hands together in front of him. "These pieces," he said, nodding toward the watches, "are quite exclusive." Josie tilted her head slightly. "They're beautiful," she replied. "Yes," he said, watching her carefully. "They are also very expensive." There it was. Josie's smile faded, not in anger, but in understanding. She'd heard that sentence before, in different forms, different places, always wrapped in the same implication. "I'm aware," she said simply. For a brief moment, the two stood there, locked in a quiet standoff. The soft music continued to play. Somewhere, a register chimed. The store breathed on. Mr. Reynolds nodded, though his eyes remained on her hands, her bag, the space around her, as if he were waiting for something to go wrong. Josie turned back to the watch. She didn't touch it.
She didn't need to.
The glass between them felt symbolic, clear enough to see through, solid enough to remind her that access was always conditional. Still, she stood there, unbothered on the surface, absorbing the moment, unaware that this simple pause, this quiet admiration, was about to set into motion something far bigger than a watch behind glass. And somewhere behind her, unseen, suspicion was already taking shape. Josie felt it before anything was said. It was the shift in the room, the way the air thickened, how the gentle music suddenly felt too loud and not loud enough at the same time. That invisible pressure that comes when eyes follow you a second too long, when silence becomes intentional. She stepped away from the watch display, her heels soft against the marble, and began to walk toward the exit. Not because she was finished looking, but because she had learned when a space no longer wanted her presence. As she passed another glass counter, she noticed the reflection. Mr. Reynolds. Not close enough to be obvious. Not far enough to be accidental. He moved when she moved. Stopped when she stopped. Josie's shoulders tightened slightly, though her face remained calm. She had perfected that over the years, the art of appearing unbothered while every instinct whispered, "Be careful." She slowed near a display of bracelets, pretending to glance at them while watching his reflection from the corner of her eye. He was pretending too. A sales associate whispered something to him. He nodded. His gaze flicked briefly to Josie's bag. That's when she knew. By the time she reached the front of the store, the sunlight spilling invitingly through the glass doors, Mr. Reynolds stepped forward. Just enough to block her path. "Ma'am." Josie stopped. "Yes?" she asked, turning to face him fully. His smile was gone now, replaced by something firmer. Authoritative. Performative. "I'll need you to come with me for a moment." Josie blinked once. "For what reason?" He gestured vaguely toward the interior of the store. "There's been an issue." Her pulse thudded hard against her ribs. Still, she kept her voice level. "What kind of issue?" Mr. Reynolds glanced around, then deliberately raised his voice. Not enough to shout, but enough to carry. "We've had several incidents of missing merchandise recently." The word missing hung heavy between them. Josie felt heat crawl up her neck. "Are you saying something is missing now?" "I'm saying," he replied slowly, "that you were observed near high-value items for an extended period of time." Observed. As if she were a problem that needed solving. Josie crossed her arms, grounding herself. "I was looking at a watch. In a store." "That watch," he said, leaning closer, "is worth more than most people make in a year." The implication cut clean and sharp. Around them, movement slowed. A woman near the perfume counter pretended not to listen. A man browsing wallets shifted uncomfortably, but stayed silent. No one met Josie's eyes. The store had decided who the moment belonged to. Josie inhaled deeply. "If you believe I've stolen something, you're welcome to call the police." Mr. Reynolds' lips pressed into a thin line. "There's no need to escalate this." "You already have." He ignored that. "Just open your bag, and we can clear this up quietly." Quietly. Josie laughed once, short, humorless. "Quiet for who?" Mr. Reynolds stiffened. "Ma'am, I'm trying to help you." "No," Josie said, her voice sharper now, though still controlled. "You're trying to embarrass me into compliance." His eyes flashed. "If you have nothing to hide, this shouldn't be a problem." There it was. The oldest trap. Josie felt the weight of it pressed down on her chest, the impossible choice between dignity and safety. Between standing her ground and being labeled difficult, aggressive, uncooperative. Her fingers curled around the strap of her bag. "Do you ask every customer to open their belongings?" she asked. Mr. Reynolds hesitated just long enough to answer honestly, with silence. Josie turned slightly, letting her gaze sweep the store. "Did you ask the woman who tried on 3 watches? Or the man who handled the display pieces?" His jaw tightened. "That's different."
"How?"
He didn't answer. Instead, he stepped closer and reached for her bag. That's when Josie's calm cracked. Just enough. "Do not touch me." The words were clear, firm, unmistakable. A hush fell over the room. Mr. Reynolds straightened, clearly offended. "Lower your voice." Josie met his eyes, her own blazing now. "I haven't raised it." Phones began to come out. A woman near the door lifted hers discreetly. Another pretended to check messages, camera angled just enough. Josie saw it all. This was becoming something else. Mr. Reynolds exhaled sharply. You're making a scene? No, Josie replied. You are. Her heart pounded, not with fear, but with rage carefully caged. Rage born from knowing this moment too well. From understanding that no matter how composed she remained, she was already guilty in his eyes. I am a paying customer, she said. I've done nothing wrong. If you think otherwise, call security. Call the police. But I will not humiliate myself to soothe your assumptions. For a split second, uncertainty flickered across Mr. Reynolds' face. Then pride took over. I'll have security escort you to the back, he said, until we resolve this. Josie felt something cold settle in her stomach. She squared her shoulders anyway.
Go ahead, she said.
Let everyone see exactly who you think needs to be escorted. And as the tension stretched to its breaking point, neither of them noticed the glass doors opening behind her, nor the presence about to walk in and change everything. The glass doors opened without ceremony. No announcement, no rush. Just the soft sound of hinges moving and a shift so subtle most people wouldn't have noticed, except that the air itself seemed to pause. Josie didn't turn right away. She was still facing Mr. Reynolds, still holding her ground, still bracing herself for whatever came next. Her heartbeat drummed steadily in her ears, loud enough to drown out the soft music and hushed murmurs behind her. Then she felt it, that unmistakable sensation of attention, focused, intentional, heavy. Not the kind that scrutinized, the kind that recognized. Is there a problem here? The voice was calm,
Low.
unhurried. It didn't ask for permission. Mr. Reynolds stiffened, as if someone had pulled a wire through his spine. Josie turned slowly. The man standing just inside the entrance looked completely out of place and perfectly at home at the same time. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a sharply tailored black suit that spoke of custom fittings and quiet wealth. His posture was relaxed, but there was nothing casual about him. His eyes were fixed on her. Not the bag. Not the crowd. Her. Something in Josie's chest eased before she could stop it. Mr. Reynolds recovered quickly, stepping forward with forced eagerness. Sir, I apologize for the disturbance. This woman, the man interrupted gently. Looks like she's being cornered. The store fell silent. Every employee froze. The quiet was suddenly unbearable, like the moment before thunder breaks. Mr. Reynolds' smile faltered. We're simply handling an internal matter. The man took a step closer to Josie. Just one. It shifted everything. He stood beside her now, not in front of her, not behind her, but next to her. Equal. Intentional. Josie felt the warmth of his presence, steady and grounding. She hadn't realized how tense she'd been until that moment. Did you steal something? He asked her softly. She met his gaze. No, I didn't think so. Mr. Reynolds' face flushed. Sir, with all due respect, you don't have the full context. The man finally looked at him, and when he did, the temperature dropped. I'm listening. Mr. Reynolds gestured vaguely. She was loitering near the watches, acting suspiciously, refused to cooperate when asked to open her bag. The man nodded slowly, eyes never leaving the manager. Did you ask anyone else to open theirs? Mr. Reynolds hesitated. That's irrelevant. It's the entire point. A few customers shifted uncomfortably. One employee swallowed hard. The man turned back to Josie, his expression softening. I'm sorry, he said. I'm late. Her lips twitched despite everything. You always are. Mr. Reynolds blinked. You know each other? The man ignored him. He reached out, not suddenly, not forcefully, but with unmistakable familiarity, and gently took Josie's hand. The store collectively inhaled. Josie felt the brush of his thumb against her knuckles, grounding her completely. Her heartbeat finally slowed. Then he lifted her hand and kissed it, slowly, deliberately, not for spectacle, for respect. The sound was barely audible, but the message thundered. Gasps rippled through the boutique. Mr. Reynolds went pale. Yes, sir. The man turned back to him, his voice calm but lethal. My name is Daniel Hart. Recognition spread like wildfire. The whispered name, the widening eyes. The sudden scrambling of posture. Daniel Hart. Founder. Owner.
CEO.
Mr. Reynolds' mouth opened, then closed. His complexion drained of color. This woman, Daniel continued, releasing Josie's hand only to lace his fingers through hers, is Josie Hart. The silence was deafening. My fiancée. A woman near the counter dropped her phone. Mr. Reynolds swayed slightly. I wasn't aware. No, Daniel said coolly. You weren't curious. Daniel's gaze swept the store. And that's the difference. Security arrived at the edge of the scene, unsure of what to do. Daniel didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. I watched this entire interaction from the security feed in my car, he said. I came in the moment I saw where it was headed. Mr. Reynolds' lips trembled. Sir, I can explain. I'm sure you think you can. Daniel turned to Josie once more. Are you all right? She nodded slowly. I am now. The words hit harder than any accusation. Daniel faced the room again. This company prides itself on luxury, he said. But luxury without dignity is just decoration. No one breathed. And what I've seen today, he added, is unacceptable. Mr. Reynolds' knees nearly buckled. Daniel squeezed Josie's hand gently. We're done here. As they turned toward the door together, the store, once so certain of its authority, felt suddenly very, very small. And everyone knew this was only the beginning. Daniel didn't rush. That alone unsettled everyone. As he and Josie took a few unhurried steps toward the exit, the boutique seemed to shrink around them. The marble floors no longer felt grand. The glass cases no longer felt untouchable. Everything that once radiated authority now felt fragile, exposed under a light too bright to hide flaws. Sir, please, Mr. Reynolds said, his voice cracking. Daniel stopped, but he didn't turn around immediately. Josie felt the shift before she saw it. The way Daniel's body went still, the way his fingers tightened ever so slightly around hers. He released her hand gently, as if he didn't want to pull her back into what was coming next. Stay right here, he murmured. She nodded. Daniel turned. Every eye followed him. Mr. Reynolds straightened instinctively, smoothing his tie with trembling fingers. The store manager who had spoken so confidently just minutes earlier now looked like a man standing on a trapdoor. I wasn't aware of your relationship, Mr. Reynolds began, rushing his words. If I had known. That, Daniel interrupted calmly, is the problem. He walked back toward the center of the store, his footsteps measured, deliberate. Not angry. Controlled. Far more dangerous. You didn't need to know who she was, Daniel continued. You needed to know who you were. Mr. Reynolds swallowed hard. Sir, I was just following protocol. Daniel stopped in front of him. Show me the protocol. Mr. Reynolds stammered. Daniel waited. The silence stretched. Is there a written policy that allows you to publicly accuse a customer without evidence? Daniel asked. One that permits you to reach for her personal belongings? Mr. Reynolds' face flushed. No, but is there a policy that encourages selective suspicion? Daniel pressed. One that tells you who deserves scrutiny based on appearance. A murmur moved through the crowd. Mr. Reynolds' mouth opened. No words came. Daniel nodded slowly, as if confirming something he already knew. Exactly. He turned his attention to the employees, his voice carrying effortlessly. Every single one of you watched this happen. No one looked up. You saw a woman stand alone, Daniel continued. You saw her treated as a threat. And you said nothing. An employee near the counter whispered, We were told not to interfere. Daniel's gaze snapped to her. Not unkind, but sharp. Then that's a failure of leadership. Security shifted awkwardly near the entrance. Daniel gestured toward them. Gentlemen, please escort Mr. Reynolds to the office. Mr. Reynolds' eyes widened. Sir, are you firing me? Daniel considered him carefully. Effective immediately, he said. You are suspended pending a full investigation. The word suspended offered no comfort. But understand this, Daniel added. The footage speaks for itself. Mr. Reynolds' shoulders slumped. Whatever fight he had left drained from him. As security guided him away, the store seemed to exhale. Daniel turned back to Josie. She was standing exactly where he'd asked her to wait, chin lifted, posture calm, dignity fully intact. The same woman who had been accused, cornered, humiliated. Except now, everyone saw her. Daniel walked to her, his expression softening in a way it never had for the room. "I'm sorry," he said again, quieter this time. "You should never have had to experience that." Josie met his gaze. "I know." He frowned slightly. "You shouldn't have to know." She smiled faintly. "And yet, here we are." Daniel sighed and turned back toward the staff. "Clear the floor." Confusion flickered across a few faces. "Sir, I'd like a moment with my fiancé," he said. "And I'd like it without an audience." The boutique emptied quickly after that. Customers filtered out, some embarrassed, some shaken, some deeply thoughtful. Employees retreated to the back, their earlier silence weighing heavily on them now. Soon, only Josie and Daniel remained in the vast, echoing space. The luxury felt hollow, without witnesses. Daniel took both of her hands. "Talk to me." Josie exhaled slowly, releasing everything she'd been holding in.
"I was fine," she said.
"Until I wasn't." He nodded. "I saw the moment it shifted." "They didn't see me," she continued. "Not really. They saw an idea. A suspicion." Daniel's jaw tightened. "That ends today." He glanced around the store once more. "This company will do better. Or it will change." Josie squeezed his hands. "Make sure it does." "I will." He leaned forward and pressed his forehead gently against hers, right there in the middle of the store that had doubted her. A quiet, intimate reclaiming of space. Outside, the world waited. Inside, something irreversible had happened. Power had spoken, and it had listened to the right voice. The boutique felt different now. Without the murmurs, without the judgmental glances and carefully guarded silence, the space no longer pressed in on Josie's chest. The chandeliers still glowed, the watches still gleamed behind glass, but the illusion of perfection had cracked. Josie stood near the center of the store, breathing slowly, reclaiming each second that had been stolen from her. Daniel watched her quietly. He didn't interrupt. He knew better than to rush this moment. Moments like these weren't about fixing something. They were about witnessing it. "I didn't come here to make a point," Josie said at last, her voice soft but steady. "I came because I wanted to buy something beautiful." Daniel nodded. "I know. I like objects that last," she continued. "Things that don't panic under pressure. Things that mean something years later." She glanced at the watch display again. "When I was younger," she said, "my mother worked 3 jobs. One of them was cleaning offices at night." Daniel's brow furrowed slightly, but he stayed quiet. "She used to wear this cheap plastic watch," Josie went on. "The strap cracked every few months, and the face was always scratched, but she never replaced it." "Why?" Daniel asked gently. Josie smiled at the memory. "Because it worked. It told time. And time, to her, was everything." She paced slowly now, heels echoing faintly. She used to say, "If you respect time, time will respect you." That stuck with me. Daniel watched her like every word mattered, because it did. "That's why I stayed near that watch," Josie continued. "Not because I wanted to steal it, because I wanted to remember how far I've come." She stopped walking and turned to face him fully. "But to them, I didn't look like someone with a past worth honoring." Daniel's jaw tightened. They saw what they expected to see. "Yes," Josie said quietly, "and what they wanted to see." She looked down at her hands, steady now, unshaking. "Do you know how exhausting it is to constantly prepare to be misunderstood?" Daniel stepped closer. "I can imagine. But I know imagining isn't the same as living it." Josie met his eyes. "I've learned to walk into rooms already braced, already calculating exits, already aware of how loud my voice sounds, how still my hands are, how relaxed my face must be." She laughed softly. "It's a full-time job just being non-threatening." Daniel felt something twist in his chest. "They never asked who I was," Josie went on. "What I do, what I've built. They didn't care." "No," Daniel said. "They didn't." She lifted her chin. "I'm not invisible. I'm just inconvenient to their assumptions." Daniel smiled faintly at that. "That might be the most accurate sentence I've heard all day." Josie returned the smile, then sighed. You know what the worst part is? What? I almost apologize. Daniel's eyes darkened. For what? For existing in a space they decided wasn't mine. Silence settled between them. Then Daniel reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a folded document and handed it to her. Josie frowned. What's this? Our new company charter, he said. Drafted last month. It includes mandatory bias training, anonymous reporting channels, and leadership accountability reviews. She raised an eyebrow. You didn't write that for me. No, Daniel said. I wrote it because of women like you. Josie studied his face. And because you listened. Yes. She exhaled slowly. Then maybe something good can come from this. Daniel nodded. It will. They stood together in silence for a moment longer before Josie turned back toward the watches. This time, she said, I want to try it on. Daniel gestured toward the display. Of course. He opened the glass case himself. Josie watched as he lifted the watch, carefully, reverently, and placed it in her palm. It felt heavier than she'd expected. Solid. Real. She fastened it around her wrist. It fit perfectly. Josie looked at the face of the watch and smiled, not because of how it looked, but because of what it represented. Time reclaimed. Worth acknowledged. She looked at Daniel. This watch doesn't just tell time. He smiled back. No. It remembers it. And in that moment, Josie was no longer just the woman they had accused. She was the woman who had outgrown their small expectations and was finally being seen exactly as she was. The video surfaced online before the store even closed. It wasn't dramatic at first glance. No shouting, no physical altercation, no chaos. Just a woman standing still, composed under pressure. A manager speaking too confidently. A shift in tone when a man in a black suit entered the frame. But people watched it again. And again. And again. They noticed the way Josie's shoulders squared when accused. The way her voice never shook. The way no one spoke up until someone with recognized authority did. The comments flooded in by the thousands. Why did they assume she stole something? Why did no one intervene? Why does dignity always require validation from power? By morning, the boutique's name was trending. Daniel sat in his office overlooking the city, phone buzzing incessantly on the desk. Press inquiries, board messages, legal updates, PR advisories. He ignored them for now. Across from him, Josie sat quietly, hands folded in her lap, not because she needed to be composed, but because she was. You didn't ask for this, Daniel said. Josie shrugged lightly. I asked to be left alone. He smiled faintly. That's always too much to ask. Outside, the city moved on, unaware that something fundamental had shifted. Inside Hartwell Luxury Group, doors were closing. Mr. Reynolds was escorted out that same night, his keycard deactivated mid-shift. His desk cleared by security while he stood nearby, stunned, trying to explain to no one in particular that he'd been misunderstood. An investigation followed swiftly. Footage reviewed, emails examined, patterns uncovered. It wasn't just one incident. It never was. Other employees came forward. Quiet reports, anonymous messages, stories that had been buried under fear of retaliation. Daniel listened to every single one. No more quiet exits, he told the board. No more polite cover-ups. Mandatory training was rolled out company-wide within 48 hours. Not the shallow kind. The uncomfortable kind. The kind that forced people to sit with their assumptions and name them out loud. Some resisted. They didn't last long. Meanwhile, Josie's name circulated through headlines, often inaccurately. Some called her lucky. Others called her brave. A few accused her of orchestrating it all. Josie read none of it. She didn't need strangers to define her. She spent those days doing what she always did, working, building, thinking. The watch stayed on her wrist, ticking steadily, reminding her that moments pass whether you let them shape you or not. One afternoon, Daniel found her standing by the window in his office, watching the city below. They want you to speak publicly, he said. Josie didn't turn. I know. You don't have to. I know that too. She turned then, meeting his gaze. But silence is what let that moment happen. Daniel nodded slowly. Then we'll do it on your terms. They drafted the statement together. It wasn't offensive. It wasn't accusatory. It was honest. Josie spoke about dignity, about being presumed guilty, about the emotional labor of staying calm when accused unfairly. She didn't name individuals. She named systems. When the statement went live, the response was immediate. Messages poured in, women, especially Black women, sharing eerily similar experiences. Stories from airports, malls, offices, schools. The pattern became impossible to deny. I didn't realize how common this was, a board member admitted during a meeting. Josie's voice echoed in the room, calm but unwavering. That's because you weren't the ones it was happening to. Change accelerated after that. New leadership standards were enforced. Diverse voices elevated. Accountability became more than a buzzword. Still, not everyone was pleased. A few investors pulled back. One executive resigned quietly, citing culture shifts. Daniel didn't flinch. Progress isn't comfortable, he said simply. Through it all, Josie remained grounded. She attended meetings, not as a symbol, but as herself. She refused to soften her language to make others comfortable. She refused to carry anger for anyone else. One evening, as the city lights flickered on below them, Daniel took her hand. You changed things, he said. Josie squeezed his fingers. I stood still. Everything else moved.
He smiled at that.
The boutique reopened weeks later, not quietly, not triumphantly, but intentionally. New staff, new policies, new leadership. Josie walked past it once, months later. No cameras, no whispers, just glass, light, and reflection. And this time, when she caught her reflection, she saw not a woman being watched, but a woman who had changed the way others looked. The street was quieter this time. Not empty, just unhurried. Late afternoon sunlight spilled across the sidewalk, warming the glass fronts of the luxury stores, softening the sharp edges of a place once defined by exclusion. The city moved at its usual pace, but for Josie, the moment felt suspended, like the breath held just before a final note fades. She stopped in front of the boutique. The same one. From the outside, nothing looked different. Same sign. Same windows. Same polished promise of elegance within. But Josie knew better now. She knew how much had been stripped away and rebuilt behind those walls. She rested her hand lightly against the glass. The watch on her wrist caught the light.
Time ticked on.
Josie smiled. Months had passed since that afternoon. The accusation, the silence, the sudden shift when power finally spoke in the language it recognized. The world had kept moving, as it always did, but something inside her had found its rhythm again. She pushed open the door. The soft chimes sounded familiar, but no longer foreboding. A sales associate looked up from behind the counter. Younger, nervous, open. Good afternoon, the woman said, smiling easily. Welcome. No hesitation. No assessment. Josie returned the smile and stepped inside. The boutique felt different, not because of the decor, but because of the air. It no longer carried that unspoken warning. The space felt neutral now.
Honest.
Josie walked slowly, letting herself be. She wasn't here to prove anything. She wasn't here to test the room. She was here because she chose to be. Her fingers brushed the same glass display where the watch had first caught her eye. For a moment, memory stirred, the tightness in her chest, the feeling of being watched, the quiet calculation of how to leave without incident. That version of her felt distant now. Not gone. Just no longer in charge. Would you like to try something on? The associate asked gently. Josie glanced up. No, thank you. I already have what I came for. The associate nodded, unoffended, and stepped back. Josie lingered a moment longer, then turned and walked toward the center of the store, where the light fell just right. She checked the time, not because she needed to, but because she wanted to. Time had once been something she guarded, measured in patience, in restraint, in survival. Every second accounted for, every move calculated. Now, time felt expansive. She thought of her mother again. The cracked plastic watch, the long nights, the quiet resilience. She wished she could show her this moment, explain what the watch truly represented. Your time mattered, she would say. It always did. Outside, a familiar figure waited. Daniel stood near the entrance, hands in his pockets, watching her with that same calm attention he always had. Not possessive, not protective, present. They stepped out together. The door closed softly behind them. No audience, no cameras, just the city and the sound of their footsteps moving in sync. Daniel glanced at her wrist. Still keeping time? Josie smiled. I am. He studied her face. Does it feel different now? She considered that. Yes, she said finally, because I'm not racing it anymore. They walked a little farther before Josie stopped again, turning back toward the boutique one last time. That place no longer held power over her. It was just a store. And she was just a woman.
Whole. Seen.
Unapologetic. Josie turned away. The watch ticked steadily as she walked on, marking not minutes, but milestones. And for the first time, every second truly belonged to her.